Chosen one, pay attention. Somebody has been watching you. Not glancing, not scrolling past your name by accident. Watching, the way a person watches something they refuse to lose sight of. Every version of you that showed up this year, the tired one, the quiet one, the one who kept walking when nobody clapped, they saw it. All of it. And chosen one, that person is about to be caught. Not caught doing something ugly. Caught doing something they were never supposed to let anyone see. Caught for the depth of it. Caught for how long it's actually been going on. Somewhere close to you, someone has spent longer than you'll ever fully know, paying attention to your life like it mattered more than their own comfort. And they never once raised their hand to take credit for it. You've felt it. That strange sensation of being tracked by something kind instead of something cruel. The near miss that shouldn't have missed. The door that opened at the exact second you needed it to. The person who randomly said the one sentence that kept you from folding. You called it luck, because luck was the only word you had for something you couldn't explain. It was never luck, it was someone. And here's the part that's about to change everything. That person's cover is thinning. The distance they kept, the shadows they used, the careful way they made sure you never traced it back to them, all of it is starting to crack. Whatever they've been hiding, it's coming into the light, soon. And once it does, the people who called you unwatched, unloved, and unprotected are going to have to sit with how wrong they were. Before we get into exactly who's been watching and what's about to expose them, press like and subscribe. Not as a formality, as a way of keeping this signal alive long enough to reach the next chosen one who needs to hear it. Here's what you need to understand before we go further. What they'll try to call obsession, when the truth comes out, isn't obsession at all. Obsession is loud. Obsession wants to be seen. Obsession takes. What's been happening around you is the opposite. It's quiet. It gives without asking. It works from a distance, so it never costs you anything. That's not fixation. That's devotion, wearing a disguise. And disguises don't last forever. So if you've ever wondered why certain disasters slowed down right before they reached you, why certain people backed off for no reason they could explain, why some doors opened that should have stayed locked, you're about to understand exactly who's responsible and why they're finally about to be seen. If you can feel that this message is already circling something true in your life, drop 77 in the comments right now. Let it be the marker that says you're paying attention, that you're ready for the reveal, that you already suspect who's been standing closer than you thought. And if this message is doing something for you, the super thanks button is there. Every bit of it keeps messages like this one reaching the people who need them. One more thing before the numbers start. None of what you're about to hear is about fear. This isn't a video meant to make you suspicious of every person in your life, checking faces for hidden motives, or treating warmth from strangers like a threat. That's not what this is. This is about recognizing that somewhere in your story, real devotion has been operating quietly, and it's finally time to name it, instead of explaining it away. Now let's get into it. Number 1. The watching started long before you noticed it. You want to know the truth? It didn't start last month. It didn't start with the thing that just happened, the thing that made you finally ask, who keeps saving me? It started years ago, in moments so small, you filed them under coincidence and moved on. A stranger who appeared at exactly the right bus stop. A comment that stopped a rumor before it ever reached your ears. A job that fell through for no reason, only for a better one to appear a week later, as if the timeline itself had been rerouted. You didn't clock any of it as unusual because none of it announced itself. That's the whole point. Real attention doesn't wear a name tag. Think about a lighthouse for a second. It doesn't chase the ships. It doesn't follow them out to sea. It just stands there, night after night, burning steady, so that when a ship drifts too close to the rocks, There's already a light guiding it back before the crew even realizes how close they came to wreckage. That's what's been happening around you. Someone built themselves into a fixed point in your life, quietly, patiently, long before you needed rescuing, so that the rescue would already be in place the moment it mattered. You may be sitting there right now, running the tape backward, aren't you? Counting the almosts. The almost breakup that fixed itself. The almost firing that got walked back. The almost disaster with a person who suddenly, mysteriously stopped showing up in your life. Every almost is a data point, and the data points are starting to form a shape you can no longer pretend not to see. Here's the part that should unsettle the people who doubted you more than it unsettles you. If the watching started that early, it means somebody clocked your worth before you did. Somebody looked at you when you were still uncertain, still unfinished, still being underestimated by everyone in the room, and decided you were worth the long game. Not the flashy gesture, not the one-time favor. The long game. Years of quiet positioning so that your path stayed clear, even when you had no idea a path was being cleared at all. Ask yourself something honestly for a second. How many people in your life actually have the patience for a long game like that? Not many. Most people's attention lasts as long as the moment is interesting. This kind of attention outlasted your worst years, your least impressive years, the years nobody else thought were worth sticking around for. That alone should tell you something about how rare what's been surrounding you actually is. And that's exactly why the reveal is going to hit so hard, because this isn't a story about someone helping you once and disappearing. This is a story about someone who has been threaded through your entire timeline, invisible on purpose, and is about to be pulled into view whether they're ready for it or not. Some of you have already found small pieces of evidence of this without realizing what they were. A note that showed up with no clear sender. A recommendation that came from someone you'd never actually met. A warning that arrived just early enough to matter, from a source that never fully explained itself. Small things. Easy to dismiss individually. Impossible to dismiss once you see how many of them there actually are. There's a particular kind of comfort in finally understanding your own history this clearly. The pieces that used to feel scattered, the moments that used to feel like isolated flukes, now line up into something coherent, something intentional. That clarity alone is worth sitting with before we go any further, because once you see the shape of it, you can't unsee it. Number 2. What looks like obsession from far away is loyalty up close. Let's deal with the word they're going to use, because they will use it. Obsessed. That's the label your critics are already preparing. The second this person's name starts circulating, they'll say it like it's dirty. They'll say it like watching over someone that closely has to mean something twisted. But words only sound ugly when you're standing far away from the truth. Get close enough, and the word changes shape completely. Obsession takes. It wants something back. It needs to be noticed, thanked, rewarded, followed. What's been surrounding you doesn't behave like that at all. It never once asked for credit. It never leaked its own name to make itself look good. It never used your story to build a following or a reputation. It just kept showing up in the places you couldn't see, doing the unglamorous, thankless work of keeping your life intact. Imagine someone tending a garden they'll never be invited to walk through, watering the roots at night when no one's watching, pulling weeds before they can choke anything out, and never once cutting a single flower to keep for themselves. That's not obsession. Obsession picks the flower. Devotion protects the whole garden and asks for nothing in return. You might be asking yourself, why? Why would anyone put in that kind of effort for someone who didn't even know they were doing it? Because somewhere along the way, this person saw something in you worth the sacrifice. Maybe it was the way you kept showing up after every setback. Maybe it was the way You never let bitterness turn you cruel, even when cruelty would have been justified. Whatever it was, it convinced them that your story deserved protecting, even from a distance, even without applause. There's a difference between someone who loves the idea of you and someone who commits to the reality of you, flaws and all, without ever needing you to perform for them. The first kind fades the moment you stop being convenient. The second kind is the one that stays in the background for years, through your ugliest chapters, your most exhausted seasons, the parts of your story you'd never post about. That's the kind of attention that's been on you, not the kind that only shows up for the highlight reel. And here's what's going to humiliate your critics the most when this finally comes out. They spent so much energy convincing everyone you were forgettable, unremarkable, easy to overlook. Meanwhile, someone with real influence had already decided the opposite. Decided you were worth watching, worth guarding, worth years of silent effort. That contradiction alone is enough to unravel everything your doubters built their opinions on. Consider, too, how differently this person must have had to move through their own life in order to keep something this consistent going without ever slipping. Every conversation where they had to bite back the urge to defend you publicly. Every moment they watched you struggle and chose the harder, quieter path of behind-the-scenes intervention instead of the easier path of stepping in visibly. That kind of restraint takes more strength than most people will ever understand. Loyalty like that rewires how you look at your own story. It means the quiet stretches you thought you survived alone were never quite as lonely as they felt. It means the effort you put into staying decent, staying soft in a hard world, was being witnessed by someone who valued exactly that, even when nobody around you seemed to notice it at all. Number 3. Every near miss you survived had a hand behind it. Chosen one, let's stop pretending those close calls were random. You know the ones. The moment the car should have hit you and somehow didn't. The version of you that should have taken that toxic offer, that toxic relationship, that toxic opportunity, and got pulled away at the last second by a gut feeling you couldn't explain. You called it instinct. Part of it was. But instinct doesn't work alone. Instinct gets fed information, and someone has been feeding yours for longer than you realize. Picture a hand reaching out just before a glass tips off the edge of a table. You don't always see the hand. Sometimes you just notice the glass never fell. That's how this protection has worked. Not loud saves, not dramatic rescues you'd remember forever. Small, quiet interventions, timed so perfectly that you mistook them for chance. Here's a question worth sitting with. How many times has a plan against you fallen apart before it ever reached completion? How many people who intended to hurt you suddenly changed course, backed off, or got distracted by something else entirely, right when you needed them to? You don't set that pattern in motion by accident. Patterns like that get engineered by someone who's paying far closer attention than anyone around you realized. Think about how many warnings you never even got to hear, because the threat never reached the stage where a warning was necessary. That's the part people miss when they imagine protection. They picture dramatic rescues. Real protection usually looks like nothing happening at all, like a disaster that simply never had the chance to start, because somebody quietly closed the door on it before you ever knew it was open. And this is where it gets uncomfortable for the people who called your survival luck. Luck doesn't repeat itself with that kind of precision. Luck doesn't show up exactly when the stakes are highest, over and over, for years. What you lived through wasn't a string of coincidences. It was a pattern of interference, run by someone who understood exactly what you couldn't afford to lose. Soon, when the full picture comes out, the people who mocked how many times you got lucky are going to realize luck was never the right word. Protection was, and protection like that doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from somebody who was never as far away as you thought. There's also a certain kind of grief buried in this realization, and it's worth naming honestly. Some of the pain you carried through those years, you carried it believing you were completely on your own. Finding out later that you weren't doesn't erase what that loneliness felt like in the moment. It just means the loneliness was never the whole truth, even when it was the only truth you had access to at the time. You can look back right now and pick out at least one moment that still doesn't fully make sense to you. One outcome that should have gone differently and somehow didn't. Hold on to that memory. It's not a loose thread anymore. It's a piece of evidence, and soon it's going to connect to everything else. Number 4, the mask that's about to slip. Every disguise has a weak point, and this one is starting to show its seams. Whoever has been standing behind your story has kept themselves hidden with real discipline, careful never to leave fingerprints, careful never to let their name attach itself to your wins. But discipline like that is exhausting to maintain forever, and the cracks are starting to show in ways they didn't plan for. Think about it like a shadow, trying to stay perfectly still while the sun keeps moving. For a while it works. But the sun doesn't stop, and eventually the shadow has to shift, has to reveal its shape, has to stop pretending it isn't attached to something real. That's exactly where this is heading. The angle of the light is changing, and what's been hidden is about to be undeniable. Maybe you've already caught a glimpse of it, a slip of the tongue from someone who knows more than they should, a detail that leaked out in a conversation that wasn't supposed to happen, a moment where someone almost said too much before catching themselves. Those aren't accidents either. Those are the mask starting to loosen at the edges. Notice too how certain people have started acting differently around you lately, a little more careful with their words, a little less willing to test you the way they used to. That shift in behavior usually means somebody let something slip in a room you weren't in, and the ripple from it is already moving through the people closest to the situation, whether they fully understand what they heard or not. And here's what makes this different from every other secret that eventually gets exposed. Most secrets unravel because someone made a mistake, got careless, got caught doing something they shouldn't have. This one is unraveling because the effort behind it has simply gotten too large to contain. You can only protect someone quietly for so long before the protection itself starts to leave a trail, before the results start speaking louder than the silence. When it finally slips all the way, and it will, the people who spent years insisting you were unwatched, unimportant, and unprotected are going to have to explain why someone powerful spent that same stretch of time making sure none of that was true. There's also a decision this person is going to have to make soon, whether to control how the reveal happens or let it happen on someone else's terms. Control is safer. Letting the truth spill out on its own is riskier, messier, but often more convincing, because nothing lands harder than a truth nobody had the chance to rehearse. Pay attention to how people who used to speak about you so freely have started measuring their words. That kind of caution doesn't appear out of nowhere. It shows up when someone senses a shift in the ground beneath them, even before they fully understand what caused it. Number 5. Why your name still occupies their every thought. Here's something that's going to be hard for your doubters to sit with. This isn't a story about someone who helped you once and moved on with their life. This is a story about someone for whom your name never really left the room. Long after the moment passed, long after the crisis resolved, long after anyone else stopped thinking about what you were going through, your name kept showing up in their mind like it had permanent residence there. Think about how rare that actually is. Most people's concern has a shelf life. It shows up when the drama is fresh and fades the second something newer grabs their attention. What's been surrounding you doesn't behave like that. It didn't check in once and disappear. It stayed, quietly, consistently, across years, across your worst seasons and your quietest ones. Your name kept surfacing in a mind that had every excuse to move on and simply refused to. Imagine carrying a photograph in your pocket for so many years, the edges go soft, and never once needing to look at it because you already know exactly what it shows. That's what your presence has been to this person, not a memory they revisit occasionally. A constant they carry without effort, because thinking of you stopped being a choice a long time ago and became something closer to instinct. You might wonder what you could have possibly done to earn that kind of permanence in someone's mind without even knowing they existed. The answer is simpler than you think. You didn't perform for them. You didn't know you were being watched, so you never adjusted yourself to impress anyone. What they saw was the real, unfiltered version of you, handling real pain in real time, and that version was the one that stuck. Ask yourself how many people you know could carry someone else's name that consistently, for that long, without it costing them anything, without needing acknowledgement, without ever cashing it in for their own benefit. That kind of consistency isn't common, it isn't casual. It's the kind of thing that only makes sense if what they feel toward you runs a lot deeper than anyone around you has been willing to consider. And when the exposure finally happens, this is the detail that's going to hit hardest. Not that someone helped you. That someone never stopped thinking about you long enough to help you consistently, invisibly, for years, without ever needing you to know their name. You might wonder if knowing all of this changes how you should feel about the years you spent thinking you were unnoticed. It doesn't have to change anything about who you were during that time. You were still the one who showed up, who kept trying, who refused to become someone smaller just because nobody was clapping. This just adds one more layer to a story that was already yours to begin with. That kind of permanence isn't sentimental, it's structural. It means you've been built into someone's decision-making for years, quietly factored into choices you never even knew were being made, simply because your well-being became a fixed variable they weren't willing to compromise on. Number 6. The ones who tried to isolate you never had a chance. They tried, didn't they? The ones who wanted you cut off, friendless, whispering behind closed doors about how to make you feel like you were standing completely alone. They worked hard at that. They spread the stories, encouraged the distance, made sure the room felt colder every time you walked into it. What they didn't know is that isolation only works if nobody's actually watching the perimeter, and somebody was. Picture a group of people trying to build a wall around someone, brick by brick, convinced that if they work quietly enough, no one will notice the wall going up until it's finished. Now picture one person standing just outside that wall the entire time, quietly removing bricks as fast as the others could stack them. That's what's been happening. Every attempt to box you into loneliness got dismantled from a direction nobody was watching. This is why, no matter how hard they pushed, you never actually ended up as alone as they intended. A door stayed open somewhere. A conversation happened that shouldn't have. A connection survived that should have been severed. You may have chalked it up to your own resilience, and some of it absolutely was. But resilience gets a lot easier to sustain when someone is quietly keeping a few doors from slamming shut behind you. Think about the specific people who should have disappeared from your life completely, given how hard others pushed for exactly that, and somehow never did. The friend who stayed, despite the pressure to leave. The opportunity that reopened after being declared dead. None of that survives a coordinated isolation campaign by accident. Something, or someone, kept intervening at the exact points where the wall was going up fastest. And here's the part that's going to sting the people who worked hardest at isolating you. Their whole plan depended on you never finding out someone was undoing their work in real time. They thought they were playing against you. They were actually playing against someone with far more patience and far more reach than they ever accounted for. Every wall they built, someone else was quietly taking apart, one brick at a time, without ever needing credit for it. Isolation campaigns depend on unanimity, on everyone around a target agreeing, even silently, to pull away at the same time. The moment even one person refuses to go along with that, the entire strategy weakens. And when that one person turns out to have real influence behind them, the strategy doesn't just weaken, it collapses completely, and it takes the credibility of everyone who participated in it down with it. Every failed attempt to box you in should have told your critics something important about who they were actually dealing with. Instead, they kept trying the same strategy, convinced that persistence alone would eventually work. It never did, and now they're going to understand exactly why. Number 7. The paper trail that's about to surface. Every long pattern leaves evidence eventually, even when it's designed not to. And what's been happening around you has left more of a trail than whoever's behind it probably realizes. Timing that lines up too perfectly to be accidental. Decisions that only make sense if someone with real reach was quietly involved. Once you start looking for the pattern, instead of dismissing each moment individually, it stops looking like chance and starts looking like a signature. Think of it like footprints in wet cement. In the moment, nobody notices them being made, but cement hardens, and once it does, the print is permanent, undeniable, impossible to explain away as nothing. That's what's about to happen here. All those quiet interventions, stacked up together, are about to harden into something too consistent to keep calling coincidence. This is exactly why the exposure feels inevitable now, instead of theoretical. It's not going to come from a dramatic confession. It's going to come from the sheer weight of the pattern becoming too obvious to keep denying. And someone is going to connect the dots publicly. Someone is going to say the quiet part out loud. And when they do, every person who insisted you were never protected is going to be staring at a timeline that proves otherwise. If it helps, you can already start noticing pieces of that timeline yourself. Write down the moments that never made sense, the rescues with no explanation, the threats that dissolved overnight. Line them up next to each other and look at the shape they make together, instead of looking at them one at a time. That shape has a name attached to it, and it's about to be spoken out loud. You don't need to go looking for the proof yourself. It's already forming, quietly, in the background, the same way everything else in this story has. All you have to do is keep living your life the way you already have been, because the truth doesn't need your help to surface. It just needs time, and time is the one thing that's finally running out for whoever's been trying to stay hidden. If this is landing somewhere real for you, that's your cue to hit the super thanks button and keep this message reaching the people who need to hear it next. Every bit of support keeps this mission alive. There's a reason patterns like this convince people faster than any single story could. A single rescue can be explained away as coincidence. 10 of them, lined up across years, stop being explainable by anything except intention. That's the threshold this is approaching now, the point where the sheer volume of evidence does more convincing than any individual piece of it ever could on its own. Evidence like this rarely announces itself all at once. It gathers quietly, in the margins, until one day somebody looks at the full collection instead of the individual pieces and realizes there was never any other explanation that fits as well as the one staring back at them. Number 8. Why they waited until now to be caught. You might be wondering why, if this protection has been happening for years, it's only now reaching the point of exposure. The answer is timing, and timing has never been something this person left to chance. Revealing themselves too early would have meant risking the very thing they were protecting. Early exposure invites early attacks. It gives your enemies a target to aim at before you were strong enough to withstand the fallout. Think of it like a seed that stays buried through an entire winter, not because it's weak, but because the timing isn't right yet for it to break the surface. Push a seed up too early, and the frost kills it. Wait for the right season, and it doesn't just survive, it thrives. Whoever's been protecting you understood that instinctively. They weren't hiding out of fear, they were hiding out of strategy, waiting for the exact moment when revealing themselves would do more good than harm. That moment is now. You're not the same person you were when this protection started. You've grown steadier, sharper, harder to shake. The version of you standing here today can survive a spotlight that the earlier version couldn't have. And that's precisely why the timing lines up the way it does. This isn't a random moment for the truth to surface. It's the moment it was always going to surface. The one this person has been quietly building toward the entire time. Consider what would have happened if this had come out years ago, before you'd built the steadiness you have now. It would have invited more scrutiny than support, more doubt than validation. You needed to become someone the truth could land on without knocking you over. That's exactly who you've become, and that's exactly why the waiting is finally over. Your doubters are going to want to frame the timing as suspicious, as if a late reveal somehow makes the whole thing less real. It doesn't. It makes it more deliberate. Anyone can help loudly, once, for the applause. It takes a completely different kind of commitment to help quietly for years and only step into the light once the timing finally serves you instead of them. It also means whoever has been doing this understood something most people never learn, that the best help is often invisible help, offered without conditions, without needing you to owe anything back. That kind of giving is rare precisely because it requires the giver to be completely comfortable with never being thanked. And most people simply aren't built for that kind of quiet generosity. Patience like that isn't passive. It's active restraint, the kind that takes far more discipline than acting impulsively ever would. Waiting years for the right moment while watching you struggle in real time and still holding back until the timing served you best. That's not indifference. That's control, born out of care. Number 9. The morning everyone finds out who's been standing behind you. There's a version of this story that hasn't happened yet, but it's close. A morning where the pieces finally connect in front of everyone at once, and the room goes quiet in that specific way. Rooms go quiet when something true lands harder than anyone expected. No dramatic announcement, no spectacle, just a slow, spreading realization settling over the same people who spent years insisting you were on your own. Picture the moment a fog finally lifts off a landscape everyone thought they already understood. Nothing about the land changed. It was always there, shaped exactly the way it is now. But suddenly, with the fog gone, people can finally see the whole picture, and they realize how much they'd been missing the entire time. That's what this reveal is going to feel like. Not a change in your story, a clearing of the fog around it. When that morning comes, watch what happens to the people who spent the longest stretch of time telling you nobody had your back. Watch how quickly their certainty turns into confusion, and how quickly that confusion turns into something closer to shame. They built entire narratives about your isolation, about how disposable you were, about how little support you actually had. Every one of those narratives is about to collapse in the same instant, in front of the same audience they performed for. There's a particular kind of silence that follows a moment like that. Not an empty silence, a full one, heavy, with everything nobody wants to be the first to say out loud. You'll recognize it the second it happens, because it's the same silence that follows any moment when a room full of people realize together that they misjudged something badly, and there's no version of the conversation that lets them take it back. You won't need to say anything when it happens. You won't need to defend yourself, explain yourself, or prove anything to anyone. The truth is going to do all of that work on its own, the same way it's been quietly working this entire time without ever asking your permission first. Think about how differently your own memories are going to feel once this context exists around them. The lonely nights won't disappear from your history, but they'll sit differently once you understand they were never quite as unwitnessed as they felt. That's not a small shift. That's the kind of thing that can quietly change how you carry your entire past from this point forward. You may already sense that morning approaching, the way you can sense weather changing before the first drop falls. Trust that instinct. It's not anxiety, it's recognition, your own awareness catching up to something that's already been true for longer than you've been able to name it. Number 10. The ones who mocked you are about to feel very small. Let's be honest about what's coming for the people who laughed. Not because you want revenge, but because consequence has a way of arriving, whether you ask for it or not. The ones who rolled their eyes at your struggles, who treated your setbacks like entertainment, who assumed nobody powerful would ever bother paying attention to someone like you, they're about to learn exactly how wrong that assumption was. Imagine standing confidently on a stage, mocking someone in the crowd, completely unaware that the person funding the entire venue is sitting 3 rows back, watching every word. That's the position your critics are about to find themselves in. They weren't just mocking you, they were mocking someone who mattered to a person with far more reach and influence than they ever accounted for. And that person heard every word of it. This is the part where the shrinking starts. Not because anyone forces it, but because certainty is a fragile thing, and theirs is about to break under the weight of new information. The confidence they had while tearing you down only worked because they assumed no one important was watching. Once that assumption dies, so does the swagger that came with it. Watch how quickly the tone changes once word starts to spread. The same voices that used to be the loudest in the room about your flaws will suddenly find reasons to change the subject. They won't apologize outright, most people never do, but you'll see it in the way they soften, the way they hesitate before saying your name, the way they suddenly remember details about your resilience they conveniently forgot to mention before. You don't have to lift a finger through any of this. You don't have to confront them, correct them, or even acknowledge what's happening. Just let the exposure do what exposure always does. Let them sit with the discomfort of realizing they spent years underestimating not just you, but the person standing quietly behind you the entire time. And notice something else worth sitting with. None of this requires you to become someone you're not. You don't need to gloat, perform triumph, or make a spectacle out of their discomfort. The most powerful response available to you is simply staying exactly who you've always been, while the truth does the rest of the work around you. There's a particular kind of quiet that follows public embarrassment. The kind where people stop bringing up a topic entirely rather than risk saying the wrong thing about it again. Watch for that quiet. It's often the clearest sign that the truth has already landed exactly where it needed to. Number 11. What happens when a silent guardian finally steps into the light? There's a specific kind of shift that happens when someone who's been operating in the shadows decides to stop. It's not loud, it's not theatrical. It's more like watching a switch flip in a dark room, where suddenly everything that was always there becomes visible all at once. That shift is coming, and once it happens, the entire shape of your story is going to look different to everyone watching from the outside. Picture a stage crew that's worked behind the curtain for the entire run of a show, never once stepping into the spotlight, content to let the performers take every bow. Then imagine the final night, when the crew finally walks out from behind the curtain to take their own bow, and the audience realizes for the first time just how much work went into everything they'd been watching. That recognition changes how people see the whole production, not just the crew. When your guardian steps forward, it's going to do the same thing to your story. People who thought they understood your journey are going to realize there was an entire layer of support running underneath it the whole time, one they never had access to see. That doesn't diminish anything you did, it reframes it. It shows people that your strength was real and that it was reinforced, both at once, and there's no shame in that combination. There's also something quietly powerful about watching someone choose visibility after choosing invisibility for so long. It tells you the moment finally mattered enough to risk it. People don't step out of the shadows for something small. They step out when staying hidden would cost more than being seen, and that alone tells you how much this next chapter is worth to them. And here's what your critics won't be able to argue with once this happens. A person with real influence chose to attach themselves to your story, quietly, for years, without asking for recognition. That kind of choice doesn't happen for people who don't matter. It happens for people worth protecting. And once that's out in the open, there's no narrative left that can convincingly paint you as someone unworthy of it. Notice too how differently people treat something once they understand it was never as simple as they assumed. Respect tends to follow revelation, even reluctant respect. Even respect people would never say out loud. That shift alone changes the entire texture of every room you walk into afterward. Number 12. You were never as alone as they needed you to believe. This is the part your enemies invested in the hardest. The belief that you were isolated, unsupported, and easy to write off, because nobody important would ever notice or care. They needed that belief to be true because it made their behavior feel justified. It's easier to mistreat someone when you've convinced yourself no one is watching closely enough to hold you accountable for it. Think about how differently people act when they believe they're unobserved versus when they know a camera is running. The behavior doesn't change because morality suddenly appears. It changes because consequence suddenly feels real. Your critics acted the way they did because they were confident there was no camera, no witness, no one with any real reach paying attention. They were wrong the entire time, and they're about to find that out the hard way. You weren't unwatched. You weren't unimportant. You weren't the disposable, unsupported figure they needed you to be in order to feel comfortable with how they treated you. Someone was there, tracking every mistreatment, cataloging every moment you were dismissed, and quietly deciding that all of it mattered, even when nobody else acted like it did. Think about how many times you told yourself you were handling everything completely alone, only to look back later and realize a specific piece of the outcome doesn't add up without outside help. That gap, the one you've been quietly noticing for a while now, is exactly where this person has been standing the whole time, just outside your line of sight. When the full picture comes out, this is the belief that's going to take the hardest hit. Not just that someone was protecting you, but that the entire foundation your critics built their behavior on, the idea that you were alone and unaccounted for, was false from the very beginning. They didn't get away with anything. They just hadn't been caught yet. This is why vindication like this feels different from an apology. An apology asks you to forgive an isolated mistake. This asks nothing of you at all. It simply confirms what you already knew in your bones, long before anyone else was willing to admit it. Number 13. The exposure that ends the disguise for good. There's no putting the mask back on once it comes fully off. That's the nature of an exposure like this one. It doesn't happen in stages that can be quietly managed or explained away. Once the pattern becomes undeniable, once the timeline connects, once the right people put the pieces together publicly, there's no version of events left where the disguise goes back on convincingly. Picture a curtain finally falling all the way to the floor after being pulled back just slightly for years. Everyone in the room can suddenly see the entire stage at once. Every prop, every wire, every piece of the setup that used to be hidden. There's no half measure to that moment. Once the curtain's down, it's down completely. and everyone gets to see the whole picture at the same time. That's what's coming. Not a slow drip of hints that people can argue about or dismiss individually, but a full, undeniable reveal that connects every strange coincidence, every well-timed rescue, every mysteriously disappearing threat into one coherent story that finally makes sense. Once that happens, there's no narrative left where you were ever truly on your own. Notice how much energy your doubters have spent trying to keep the old story alive, the one where you were unsupported and easy to dismiss. That energy is about to become useless overnight. Every excuse they had ready, every explanation they were saving for later, all of it depended on the disguise staying intact. It won't. And there's no version of their argument that survives once it doesn't. And for whoever's been carrying this secret, that exposure is going to feel like relief as much as anything else. Hiding something that large for that long takes a toll nobody talks about. When it finally comes out, they're not just going to be seen, they're going to be free of the weight of staying invisible, and you're going to finally understand the full scale of what's been standing behind you this entire time. Think about how much lighter the air feels once a secret, that heavy, finally stops needing to be carried. That lightness doesn't just belong to the person stepping into view. It belongs to you too, because you've been carrying pieces of this uncertainty for years without even realizing it. Number 14. The reason this was never about revenge. It would be easy to turn this moment into a story about payback, about watching your critics squirm and enjoying every second of it. But that was never really the point of any of this, and it's not the point now either. The point was never to humiliate the people who doubted you. The point was always to make sure you survived long enough and steadily enough to become who you were always going to become. Think of it less like a courtroom verdict and more like a scale finally balancing after being tilted for years. Balance doesn't need noise. It doesn't need an audience clapping. It just needs the weight to finally sit where it was always supposed to sit. That's what's happening here. Not punishment for its own sake, just the truth settling back into its rightful place. This matters because it changes how you get to carry this moment when it arrives. You don't have to become bitter to enjoy being vindicated. You don't have to gloat to feel the relief of finally being seen clearly. You can watch the exposure happen, watch the people who doubted you go quiet, and still walk away from it steady, still walk away from it kind, because that's who you were before any of this started, and that's who you get to keep being now. Whoever has been protecting you this whole time understood that distinction better than anyone. They didn't do any of this to build a case against your enemies. They did it because your story mattered enough to guard, quietly, without needing a single moment of credit until the timing finally called for it. That's not revenge. That's devotion that finally gets to stop hiding. That's the difference between protection built on ego and protection built on love. Ego needs an audience immediately. Love is willing to wait as long as it takes, even if it never gets acknowledged at all, because the point was never the credit. The point was always you. Number 15. The new chapter that begins the second they're seen. Here's where this story stops being about the past and starts being about what comes next. Once the truth is out, once the identity behind all of it is finally visible, your life doesn't just get an explanation. It gets a foundation it didn't have access to before, because now the protection that used to work in secret can start working out in the open, and that changes what becomes possible for you going forward. Think of it like a bridge that's been under construction underwater, invisible from the surface, finally breaking through to where you can actually walk across it. The bridge isn't new. It's been there the entire time, holding weight, doing its job. But now you can see it, use it, trust it, without having to guess whether it's actually going to hold. This is the beginning of a different chapter, One where you're not wondering anymore who's been quietly clearing your path. One where the people who doubted you have to reckon with the truth in real time instead of getting to rewrite it later. One where your story stops being something people can dismiss as luck, because luck doesn't have a name, and this does. You didn't ask for any of this. You didn't manufacture a protector to make your story sound more impressive. You simply lived your life honestly enough, long enough, for someone with real reach to notice and decide you were worth standing behind. That's not a small thing. That's the kind of thing that changes how your entire story gets told from here forward. And it's about to happen whether anyone else is ready for it or not. And once that foundation is visible, it doesn't just change how others see your story. It changes how you're allowed to move through the next one, with certainty instead of guesswork, with roots instead of assumptions, finally standing on ground you always suspected was there, but could never quite prove until now. So here's where we land, chosen one, not with a dramatic ending, but with a clear one. Somebody has been watching you, and it was never the threat your critics wanted you to imagine. It was protection, patient and deliberate, working quietly in the background of a life they thought was unguarded. That protection is about to step into view, and when it does, every narrative built on the idea that you were alone is going to fall apart in real time. You don't have to chase this reveal. You don't have to dig for it or force it into the open before it's time. It's already moving, the same way it's been moving this entire time, without ever needing your permission first. All that's left for you to do is keep living the way you already have been, steady, unbothered, undeniable. Because the moment this comes fully into the light, the story is going to speak for itself. Before you go, chosen family, if this message found something true in you, drop a 77 in the comments one more time, and let it stand as proof that you saw this coming before anyone else did. Hit like, hit subscribe, and if you want to keep messages like this reaching the people who need them, the super thanks button means more than you know. Thank you for being exactly the kind of person worth watching over. One last thought before we close this out. Whoever they turn out to be, whatever shape this reveal finally takes, the truest thing in all of it is this. You were worth protecting long before you had any proof of it, and you're going to keep being worth it long after this story stops being new. That was never going to change, no matter how long the mask stayed on. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay steady, stay aware, and take care.